This weekend, I've gone down memory lane with Super Mario 3D All-Stars, a recent release for Nintendo Switch that contains Mario 64, Mario Sunshine, and Mario Galaxy. And these three different games represent three different things for me. Mario 64 is the game I never played when I was younger. It represents a stage of history for 3D platformers as a whole. Sunshine is the game I did play, and it was one of the first 3D platformers, well, in fact, one of the first games I ever played on console. And Mario Galaxy is a game that I never really gave a fair chance, and so revisiting it now will allow me to really explore the game that I never truly got to grips with back in the day. So I'll go through in order. Mario 64. I can really appreciate the ground that was broken with Mario 64, a time where just having open 3D environments must have been so foreign, so groundbreaking, and arguably there has not been a transition in modern gaming, in my lifetime indeed, where games have made such a huge leap as they did going from 2D to 3D. So I can only imagine the moment that gamers had when they first booted up the Nintendo 64, stuck the cartridge in, and saw the castle rendered in 3D and were able to move around in this entirely new dimension as Mario. At the moment, in this modern day, we look at it and it looks very jaggy, incredibly dated, and the aspect ratio has not been altered at all for 3D All-Stars. So it can seem very dated, but I'm incredibly conscious to understand the context of this game. When was it released? What it came from? What the kind of conventions that were being shattered, and the fact that Nintendo managed to not only create a 3D game in a time where it was still very new and very rare, but they managed to do it so well, because playing this game now, it does feel a little bit dated, but on the whole, the mechanics absolutely stand up. It feels responsive. Mario is relatively still fun to control. There aren't many dynamics like you get in the later games, but just in terms of that raw, pure 3D platforming experience, 64 is still quite formidable, so I can certainly appreciate it for that. And I'm glad that there's this game, which I've seen plenty of times on YouTube videos where there have been documentaries about the history of Mario games, Nintendo, just 3D games in general that talk about Mario 64. And it's actually kind of surreal, this game that I've seen played so many times on YouTube, actually being able to play it myself. So I'm quite thankful for the fact that I can actually add this game to my library and play it whenever I want to experience the history of gaming. History of 3D gaming, a truly pivotal, defining moment. So it's something that I think context is very important on. And I'm almost going to say that the fact that it's not in widescreen doesn't bother me too much, because my appreciation for this is more about what it means for 3D's history. Not that I necessarily wanted them to bring it into a full remaster with flashy graphics, widescreen support, 60 FPS. So now on to the reason that I even bought Super Mario 3D All-Stars, Super Mario Sunshine. This is a game that it just brings back so many memories, and it's not even the gameplay or the story, it was the world that I fell in love with as a child on this game. It's split up into multiple levels, which are essentially sandboxes, mini open worlds, and you go to them multiple times, and there's a mission each time, usually up to 8 missions in each of these locations. And it's set on Isle Delfino, where Mario and the gang are going on holiday away from the Mushroom Kingdom. And when they go there, there's Shadow Mario, who the locals mistake for being Mario, and he starts creating this mess with this ooze all around the island, and then Mario is thrown in jail and forced to clean it all up. And it's a bit unusual to see a Mario game with a story like that, but at the same time, when I first played this, I had absolutely no reference for what a story should be in a Mario game, so to me, this was just how it was. And the same thing goes for Flood, where you're given this device which can be used to shoot water out of a directional nozzle to clean up the ooze and defeat enemies and such, but it can also be used to hover or run at high speeds or shoot up into the air as a rocket. And the interesting thing for me is I retroactively learned that people weren't a massive fan of Mario Sunshine for the reasons they thought FLUDD was a gimmick. But it's just the context for me is that this was my first Mario game in 3D. So for me, this was just what it was. It's not a gimmick. To me, this was Mario. And when it moved on to Mario Galaxy, I almost missed FLUDD because I felt as if FLUDD was a defining feature of a 3D Mario game. I loved how the hover mode in particular, I think the hover mode really defines the feel of this game, where you can do the initial jump, but then there's a little bit of extra skill in the additional precision of using FLUDD. And also, funnily enough, going back and replaying it, and as of me doing this video, I've beaten Bowser, so I've done like the main story, but not 100%. I've realised that mastering the backflip makes this game a lot easier. There's plenty of times where just being able to jump a little bit higher makes certain areas that when I was younger I thought you weren't supposed to go to, but I've realised the back jump makes you far more flexible. So getting used to doing that on demand really makes the game a lot better. And playing through it, it's in HD now, it's much more clear. It is 30 frames per second. I was a bit disappointed in that. I know the original game was as well, but that's one area I feel like for Sunshine, just because I really did want to play the game, but with a fresh coat of paint, if you will, I did want it to be 60 frames per second. And unfortunately, not only is it 30 frames per second, but I definitely saw it drop in a few areas on top of just being 30. So it doesn't feel incredibly stable. So I'm a little bit disappointed. In fact, from a porting point of view, I'd say I'm the most disappointed in Sunshine being represented here. But in terms of just the game itself, being able to replay it again, because although I bought the game back in the day, I don't have a clue where the disc is, let alone my GameCube. I mean, mysteriously, my GameCube, I have no idea where it went. It's been so long since I tried to use it. It's probably like in a loft somewhere behind a bunch of boxes. But I have no way of playing this game other than this collection, really. So it's good that I can play it again. I realise it's not a perfect game. I knew that when I was younger, and I can acknowledge that now. There are certain levels which feel quite janky, like the objective feels like it's not entirely fun to achieve. I think, for example, there's this one mission in a casino where you have to turn these tiles around in order to create a picture, but the mechanics you use to spin them around, they don't quite work. And there's a few missions like that where it feels as if they didn't adequately test it when they implemented the mission. But on the whole, the vast majority of the game is still very fun. I don't know how much of that is because I'm remembering how much I enjoyed it back in the day and it's enhancing how much I like to play the game, but in some of the areas I feel like there is some truly challenging platforming, especially the levels where FLUDD is taken away from you and you no longer have the ability to course correct with the hover nozzle, so you just have to rely on your pure skill as jumping Mario around. And some of those missions where I was thinking this is actually quite hard, and back in the day when I was much younger, I think I got stuck on some of these levels for many days, like weeks at a time. And it's nice that I can come back, and although they are difficult and I did die a few times, it's nice that I can now play this game and get through it in, I suppose, what was essentially a day. But back in the day, it was much harder. It's like, that's an interesting observation just for me as a person, is that I've obviously gotten a lot better at games if I used to get stuck for such a long time. And now, although I did still find it tricky, I was able to persevere and do it. I suppose you'd expect that after, what, like 17 years. So there you go. Sunshine, really enjoyed it. And I think it gets an unfair amount of hate these days. I know maybe it's because of the particular missions that definitely needed additional testing, but on the whole, judged as an overall experience, I think Sunshine is a great Mario 3D game and a great successor to Mario 64. And then we move on to Mario Galaxy, which I played a bit back in the day, but I rented it from a Blockbuster. I didn't actually buy it. So I only got to play it for a couple of days, and I'm not sure I even finished it. And my memories were that it was a very good game, but I think it was simply that when I was younger, I didn't have loads of money, obviously, to spend on games, so I really had to pick and choose. And at that point in my life, I just bought an Xbox 360, and I was more inclined to buy games for that because I really appreciated the enhanced graphics as opposed to the Wii. So just because of my limited budget back then, I didn't really have the money to justify getting Mario Galaxy. So I didn't play it a great deal. So for me, playing these free games, Mario Galaxy is almost something new to me. I mean, I can certainly remember playing some of these levels, but it is quite a fresh experience. And I will say this, not only does it hold up well over a decade later, but it could genuinely pass for a modern game. It still plays very well. Mario feels by far the most precise amongst the other two games. The graphics look gorgeous at times. It's the art direction that really sells it. There's nothing technically mind-blowing going on here, but in terms of the art direction, it's just so appealing. And also, and you really feel this coming from Mario Sunshine, I massively appreciated the jump to 60 frames per second. And I had to remind myself that this game was originally 60 frames per second even on the Wii. And I was wondering how it accomplished this given how good it looks, but I just tried to theorize it a little bit, is that most of the missions take place in space, of course, which means that a lot of the environment is actually just a texture in the background, and the environment itself is quite small, so not a ton is being rendered on screen at once, which I think is allowing the GPU of the Wii at the time and now the Switch to have a lot more breathing room to just push into the frame rate, which is a really, if you think about it, an incredibly intelligent design decision for Nintendo, where I suppose back then they had to compensate for the fact the Wii was not quite up to par with the 360 or the PS3. So they put everything into the art direction. And it's something I think we continue to see from Nintendo, where they design their games in a very smart way, where they don't try to be overly ambitious in terms of the technical side, like how hungry are they on the graphics, but they really put the strength into the visuals, just, you know, in the color, the design of the assets, the overall animation. And Mario Galaxy has held up just shockingly well. But I do remember at the time as well, going back to like how I prioritized the 360, I remember thinking that it was such a shame that you could only play Mario Galaxy on the Wii because the Wii was not a HD console. And the fact that it's now in 1080p is glorious to behold. It's such a good looking game. And I find it interesting. I have spent a lot of time talking about just the graphics of Mario Galaxy, but it really is amazing, especially as you go from 64 to Sunshine to Galaxy. But even if you go to Odyssey, which is of course a much newer game than Galaxy, it still looks really good. In fact, in some ways, I'd say Galaxy here looks a bit better than Odyssey. Just in terms of the fluidity and the color of the stages and such, like it's a visual feast. But the gameplay is also very good. Mario is far more precise than he is in the other two games, and you also have motion controls implemented in this. Is something I was genuinely quite concerned about. Not only am I not a fan of motion controls generally speaking, but also I thought that the Pro Controller, which is my preference for the Nintendo Switch, would suffer a little bit if I tried to use it like a Wii Remote, because there's no IR scanner, which made the Wii Remote work. But in reality, I'd say it's better than doing it on the Wii, because I suppose with the Wii, if you wanted to point at the screen, you had to point actually at the screen so that the infrared scanner would pick up the Wii Remote. But with this, it's just sensing the motion, not its relativity to the screen. So I can just rest the Pro Controller on my lap, which is where I tend to hold the controller, and just subtly move it around there. And if it ever goes out of sync, I can just press the R button to recenter it. And I do have to do that a lot. I'm constantly recentering, but it's just a tap of the R button, so it's really no hassle to do it. So not only do I think the motion controls are translated fine onto Switch, I would say that they're better than they were in the original Wii release. So they've done a fantastic job. I really do applaud them. It works so well. I thought I might have to use the Joy-Cons just because that's a little bit more of a pointer, but no, playing this game with the Pro Controller works incredibly well. And also, I think it just flows the best out of the games. Like, the variety in the missions is fantastic. You have some levels which are like traditional 3D Mario World, some are more concentrated. There's a lot of variety on display. And as of me making this video, I haven't quite completed Galaxy, but of all the games, I think this is the one that I'm going to try and actually 100%, because As much as I'm nostalgic for Sunshine, I do think it has some rough edges. And with 64, I love the fact it's a real piece of history that I now have, but it does feel dated. I can't get away from that fact. But with Galaxy, it's now made me think that I really want a Galaxy 3. And a little bit sad, I guess, that we didn't get Galaxy 2. And Galaxy 2, I never even played, ever, like not even once. So I would have loved Galaxy 2, but Galaxy here is fantastic, and I really hope they're considering a Galaxy 3, because it's just that good. So yeah, this is not... I don't want to consider it as like a review, because I haven't played through all of the games to completion. And in the case of 64, I haven't even played it through to completion in my past. It's really just an appreciation of history for me. But I did want to talk about it because this collection has brought some genuine joy to my weekend, right? Going back and seeing some of the early stages of gaming and seeing how fun it was even back then. So, as always, people, thanks very much for watching, and see you next time.